2023. Just to advise everyone that the meeting will be recorded, correct, and be available live stream later. And it's got that all under control. Item number 1, karakia. Can I ask Councillor Shepherd this very kindly offer their services tonight?
Tuia ki te Māori o te whenua, tuia ki te mana o te tangata, tuia ki te pono i aroha, kia piki, kia iki, ki te taumata, tuia tai.
Item 2, apologies. I don't think we have any. We're going to full house. Nice to see. Item number 4. Confirmation of minutes from the ordinary, conflict of interest, sorry. Yeah. Item number 3, conflicts of interest. Anyone got any conflicts pertaining to the items today? No, thank you. Item number 4, 4.1 ordinary council meeting, 29th of May 2023, confirmation of minutes. Do we have any points of clarification of those minutes? That being the case, could I have a move for those? Councillor Westmans and Councillor Shepherd. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carry. 4.2 is the ordinary council meeting on the 30th of May. Any points of clarification of those minutes? Can I have a move for that? Thank you, Councillor Parks, seconded by Councillor Lachlan. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carry. Thank you. 5.1 members' portfolio updates. Right, here we go to first. Steve.
I don't have anything to report in terms of economic development, but I did just want to mention an observation I made last week. I was in the South Island last week on business, and we visited the Central Otago District Council. And the thing that impressed me was that as you walked in the door, they had a very large table with several copies of their spatial plan on it. And in my time here, I've had so many people ask me about our spatial plan. It was beautiful. It was very clear for each part of the district what that spatial plan is, and they told me people come in all the time to check it out and to read. So I thought that was a good thing. The other thing that was a surprise to me was they take their dogs to work. And the meeting I went to was full of dogs, and out in the background, the dogs were playing in the little courtyard. They said it's completely changed their culture at work, and they love it. I'm not sure it's something we would want to copy, but it was a very interesting thing to experience. So, but I do think that the spatial plan thing is a really good idea for us to have it displayed like that. It was compelling. You wanted to look at it, and I wanted to read about a district I really, of course, only have a business.
Central Otago.
Central Otago.
Who's the mayor there?
I didn't go to see him.
Not Gore.
No, not Gore. No.
Okay, thank you. Just that we don't have a spatial plan, we have a district plan that should be available.
Yes,
to
but
all our officers, of course.
we do have special plans, but very serious, and it just looked such a good thing to do.
Cool. Thank you very much. Right, and so next up with Sport and Recreation, Council Rachel Shepherd.
No, not too much to add. Sports Advisory Council met last week, although it was an apology, I was at Tangi. No, everything seems to be ticking along. Winter sports, I've been popping up and having a look and watching a little bit of football, a little bit of netball. And the clubs seem to be going all guns blazing, so good news out there.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Councillor Rachel. Youth and Technology, Councillor Cuddum Fletcher.
Thank you, Worship. Nothing new to report, but just wanted to take this opportunity and acknowledge not only those who've passed on, but also the fact that it's Matariki, and Matariki is a beautiful time in which we can pay homage to those who have passed on, and a wonderful opportunity to acknowledge those who have passed in the past year. I speak of that in terms of Māori year in the last 12 or so months, and a wonderful opportunity to acknowledge those that have been instrumental in not only their contributions to our community and wider district, but also the mamai that's still felt by a lot of their families at this time. So I just wanted to make that acknowledgement here today. Me te tuku i ngā whakaaro kia rātou ko ngā te tiroanga kanohi, engari hoki mai kia tātou te hunga ora e mihi nei kia rātou.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Age and disability. Kirsty, anything to report?
Yeah, so I went to the Access Taupō meeting. It was at the Great Lakes Centre, which was my first time going to it. Really good. One of the things that stood out to me though was, unfortunately, when we did all the work down at the lakefront to develop that area, they weren't consulted in regards to disability parking, and there's just not enough down there. So that's something that they're going to raise, just how they could be catered to better down there. But I think it was just timing, because everything was just so last minute at the end. So that was one thing that was brought up. Another thing was in the long-term plan, wanting to have a look at a toilet. Someone needs a Taupō playground, which is a thing called Changing Places, which is basically they've got them sort of in several places throughout the country, and it's for when a change table is no longer big enough for a person, for a child that gets too big for that. It's got like an adult sized bed in it that you can still use, and it's basically, I think you need like a special parts to be able to get into it, but it just caters for those with disabilities. So I think they've got one at Mount Drury and at the Mount, one at Hamilton Gardens. Yeah, so it would be good to have one yeah, for people. And yeah, but I thought it was great forum there. Yeah, that was in regards to that bit. Should I talk about the Mangakino bit as well? Yeah. So just something to mention, this Saturday night, Tirohanga are having their Matariki ball out at the Tirohanga Hall. Anyone that wants to attend, it's really good event where a huge number of the rural community come together. So that was good. And we also did a visit with the mayor to Mangakino School, and they're doing great things there as in regards to classrooms are getting done up, and they're looking at having like a working farm there on the school grounds, so which will be really awesome. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Kirsty. Right, next up we have Arts and Culture, Councillor John Williamson. Good day, John.
There is a move afoot to wind up the Friends of the Lake Taupō New Zealand Art Gallery Committee. Has been public notified. So times there's a meeting for members from a special general meeting on Sunday, July 2nd. Following that, there'll be a meeting on the second general meeting will be held on August the 6th. We either accept or reject the resolution. Doesn't mean to say there won't be any connection with as the advocate with the Arts Gallery Museum through the council officers and the reason. So it's just that at this stage we're doing the committee believes it's still relevant or not, and challenges getting members to join.
Yes.
Which is probably not just unique to this organisation. So it's just an update.
Okay,
so
thanks, John. Sad it does happen, but understandable circumstances. Thank you very much. Environment and Climate Change, Councillor Danny Loughlin.
Good on your worship. Yes, I attended Kids Greening Taupō Strategic Leadership Group, Hui, as well as Greening Taupō last week. Yeah, they had a very successful Greening Taupō Day, what some people were able to attend. I had to give a donation instead. But yes, we just note that we do have the Matariki planting day coming up soon, and I understand that Miraka might be supporting them again, which is great. But otherwise, just lots of work happening. Still trying to deal with Cyclone Gabriel outcomes and things as well. So still looking for support from council for Wairake drives and stuff. So just note that as well. But yes, a lot of stuff happening in that space. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Danny. Community Safety, Councillor Kevin Taylor.
Nothing to report this month. Your worship, the CCTV project is ticking along behind the scenes.
Thank you very much. Emergency management, Councillor Anna Park.
Thank you, Your Worship. Firstly, can I just acknowledge the passing of Mark Dennis? I attended his funeral on the weekend up north. Mark was instrumental in the development of REAP and giving troubled teams a second chance with work on the farm, stuff like that. I attended last Monday, the 19th, chaired the Joint Committee for Civil Defence and Emergency Management. We had a really good deep dive into the Auckland Emergency Response Report following the cyclone and Auckland anniversary flooding events, which was fascinating, and also an update on some emergency management legislation which is being introduced to the House and will go to Select Committee, which will give us, as the Emergency Management Committee, a chance to sit in on that. So that's all, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Community Services, Lawyer of House, Councillor Yvonne Westerman.
A little bit out of action with a sprained ankle, but I did manage to get to the Borough House, get together with the first baby that was born there, Mata, and that was a really warm and wonderful opportunity to meet with her. So there's a lot of interesting stuff happening up at Borough House over the next month.
Anything from the cash flow? Food production and primary industries, Councillor Kylie, there. Kylie.
Kia ora, thanks, David. Just really want to highlight that on Thursday this week, there's the open day for the GHG partnership on a farm out at Redcross. Should anybody want to attend, just looking at the reductions. Yeah, partnership with Fonterra and Nestle. So I think it's incredible, out of 20 farms across the country that there's been one chosen for our region. We had a wonderful East Rural meeting yesterday with a number of public in attendance. So that was very well received and very well attended. So thank you.
Very good, thank you, Kylie. Councillor Duncan Campbell.
Nothing. Just one thing I'd like to mention is a community showing of the Voices for Freedom showing tonight. That's the movie. We Came Here for Freedom, about the protests in Wellington. I would like to encourage councillors to go along. There is quite a few members of the community go along attending. And I encourage councillors or anyone really interested, really as a means of understanding where people are coming from, towards reconciliation, because I think that is something. It's not, these things are not always easy, but it's still very much a live issue for a lot of people out there. So it's just like to say that.
Thanks, Duncan. Sandra, you didn't have any? Oh, sorry. Councillor Sandra Greenslade. Turangi. Good afternoon, Sandra.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Been another busy time down in Turangi. It's a couple of playground project is coming along extremely well because the weather's actually been really great here for the last month or so, and we've actually gone with a few weeks with no rain at all. So I think Councillor Fletcher and I probably drive past here every day and look at the playground and waiting for the opening of it. The Heartland Fund, which is contributed to by the King Country Trust and Manawa Energy, provided the funds for the carousel in the playground, which is excellent community participation. The co-governance committee met on I think it was the 9th, and lots of issues discussed there, and it was really nice actually to see quite a few members of the public turn up to that meeting. I went to the DGLT branding public meeting at Tangaro Lodge. Excellent turnout from community and lots of lively discussion, and it was sort of agreed by community really that the Love Taupō brand is an excellent brand. It's a brand that everyone relates to, and we didn't feel as Turangi people that we wanted to muck around with that, but we would also like to be part of something going forward. So that was good feedback from that community. I'd also like to thank the Turangi community for the number of annual plan submissions that they made, which meant that we did actually have a hearing in Turangi, which I know in years gone by has not been the case. And so there were enough people turned out to say what they thought about our annual plan, and I'd like to especially thank our community for doing that. The Turangi transfer station with its new weighbridge is up and going, and I'm sure there's lots of issues that everybody wants to tell me about, and they are. And I know that the staff are onto that. And I'd just like to also comment on the $5 million put into the mountain today from the government. This is going to make a huge difference to the Turangi community. That's something that everybody's been very worried about down there. So we are very pleased to see that. And last but not least, Turangi will be celebrating Matariki on Friday the 14th of July at the Tukano Turangi RSA with a shimmer and shine evening. If you'd like to come, you're most welcome. Shimmer and shine. Dress up posh and come looking gorgeous. And that's all from me. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Excellent report from Councillor Greenslade. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, members, for the reports and your hard work. Could I have a move that the reports be received? Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Seconded by Councillor Lofton. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Again, carry. Lovely. 5.2, recommendations on the future of the Lake Taupō Protection Trust and residual trust funds. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon, councillors. Last time we were here on the Lake Taupō Protection Trust, we were in a workshop where we sought direction on the future of the trust. And at that workshop, you directed us that your preferred option is to wind it up. Subsequently, when we had a joint committee meeting of the trust, where they recommended that the trust be wound up as well. However, in the meantime, we sought more legal advice and tax-related advice, as well as we obtained some new documents from the trust itself, which led us to change our initial recommendations to wind it up, and instead recommend to keep the trust, but with simplifying the current structure, with Taupō District Council being the sole trustee, and rolling back the roles and functions of the existing settlors. I guess if you recall, we had the settlors had so the current settlors were ourselves, the Waikato Regional Council, and the Crown. And two of them, the Waikato Regional Council and the Crown, have stated very clearly that they do not wish to continue to contribute to the trust. And that's why we are recommending that our council becomes the sole settler. So it became increasingly clear that we should keep the trust, but with Taupō District Council being the sole trustee. So the paper sets out the recommendations into more detail, also including to thank the outgoing trustees for their excellent work over the past 2 decades, I believe. Take questions.
Okay. Thank you. Questions? Councillors?
Comments or just questions?
Both.
Um,
Councillor Leonard.
I think we've missed the key point was the trust was effective because of its independence and with the quality of the trustees. And I just think the whole process has been a schmozzle, and I'm just exceptionally disappointed, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, I think quite clear. I think supporting Councillor Leonard's comments over the process of being quite familiar, being involved for 10 years. So I understand that there's been a definitive date when we wind up the trust. But to some of our consultation process 2 or 3 years ago, the support of the community, I think just one another reflection on about starting what's the reason? I know the process and feel my personal view that I need to trust the tree sharing. Someone else like.
Okay, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Richard. Look, I'm happy to move the recommendation we've got in front of us when we get to that stage. But I just want a question of clarification, and I agree with the sentiments already expressed. I raised a question about this some months ago and was given an understanding that we could not remove 2 of the settlors and retain the trust as was, that was a legal showstopper. I'm curious now, so I hadn't raised this before the meeting. What has changed in the meantime?
So
We're not removing them as set laws, we're just limiting the scope so then they become nominal set laws. They don't financially contribute. So you're correct, we can't remove the set laws. They are what they are. It's like your parents, you can't change them. The existing, just to start off, I only became involved in this since May, and it became clear that what this paper is actually about is just the framework and the structure that wraps around the management functions which council have resolved to take over. So that was a substantive decision in my view. And this is just how do we go about doing that. And at the moment, as the trust stands, there are a number of documents out there because you will understand the project a lot better than I do, but it involves 27 landowners with management deeds and documents out in circulation at the moment, which will have to be all brought back in to be changed if we wrap up the trust and then figure out what structure we're going to have to undertake those management functions, which we're already assuming, we've assumed them that unless you revoke that decision back in February, that decision's been made. So it's a matter of working out the best way to deliver those outcomes and retain the relationship with the landowners, retain the reputation that the trust has built up, and the most efficient way is to keep the existing trust. The set laws stay in place, but the function of WRC and the Crown gets limited so that they are nominal set laws only. Generally, set laws have a very limited role in a trust situation. This was particularly unique because it had a project agreement with funding obligations and everything. That all goes. They don't contribute. They might have to sign a couple of documents now and again as set laws, but in terms of the practical day-to-day, TDC's it. You can have a sole trustee, and that's the capacity in which TDC is going to continue or take over. Sorry, there's currently, as you know, the 4 individual trustees. The option to retain them, I don't know, was ever on the table. As I say, I don't have the history with that, so I can't comment. We were just faced with winding up a trust and starting all over again, establishing a relationship with the landowners, bringing back 27 times however many documents are out there currently in circulation for signing, changing it all and all that sort of, and so in addition to that, there's the tax implications, the charities register, there's a whole heap of other things which I didn't really want to bore you with, but it just made sense to us that the existing structure, albeit varied to limit the scope of the set laws, would be the appropriate vehicle because of that independence from TDC. We don't want to, even if we can ring fence, which we can, funds coming into TDC, we've still got to have some kind of entity or something that sets it apart, and from a public's perspective, they understand that that is for that project, because the purpose of the trust is continuing on that's what we've decided. We're taking over those management functions, not to wind it up, not to no longer want to fulfill the purpose of the trust. We want to do that. So how do we do that? And that's where we've landed.
First,
Sorry, that was a long
option,
answer to a short
option
question.
2 is you would achieve it by option 2.
yes, that's the preferred option.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
So thank you for that. And my apologies, I must have missed that in the reading, that assuming at subsequent meetings with the Crown and with the Regional Council, they agree to this and they
sorry.
to go through that.
You've
I
already
get
had
all
all those
that.
meetings, yeah.
I missed the point where they just become, in effect, silent
Silent.
to that. Yep. No, that was really the guts of my question. The intent and the place we've landed is where I thought we were going to get to a long time ago, and I'm glad that we got to that
Absolutely,
point.
3 years ago.
Yeah, and I'm glad we've got to that point now. I think this is a good outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Any other question, Councillor Park?
Yeah, probably more of a statement than a question. Question, Your Worship, is around this has been ongoing for a long time, and we can all not thank Waikato Regional Council for treating the lake as a body of water down the back of a farm rather than a jewel in our crown. I also think that these resolutions are very black, white, and technical, and I think that the trustees deserve a little bit more respect than perhaps we have shown to date. So I don't know how we do that from a relationship perspective, but I think that we need to show our gratitude to them in some formal way, to thank them for what they have done, because I mean, the lake is everything.
Yeah.
And without it, we wouldn't be who we are. So I think they deserve, particularly Clayton Stent, deserve recognition. Yes,
Absolutely. We'll definitely take care of that. Councillor Lachlan.
I'm happy to second that resolution. First, I want to acknowledge the great work that the Protection Trust did. I mean, obviously, a lot of us have been part of supporting that journey for a long time. And acknowledge that the key job, which was to reduce the nitrogen by 20%, and was achieved quite some time ago now, but nonetheless, that was the important part. From my perspective as a new councillor, we agreed to wind up the trust. We've since then found most cost-effective way of maintaining these 27 titles for 999 years and everything else is for the trust to continue with the council as its trustee. It's obviously a very different role. Its role is purely just to be a custodian for those titles to make sure that that good work is not lost. When we had that previous resolution, I was quite clear. I wanted council to make sure that all the knowledge and all that good work and things were not lost. I think if we legally are now the custodian for the Protection Trust, that makes it a little bit easier, I think, to do that. So I'm quite happy to take on the role in terms of maintaining those, ensuring those leases are maintained in terms of keeping that 20%, which is now, well, obviously it's 0 in some ways, but yeah, put aside my maths. I think this is a very elegant solution in terms of something, like you say, that is probably carried on a bit too long as a process. So yes, happy to see.
Thank you, Danny. Excellent summing up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Williamson.
Support, Councillor Lachlan saying, although I don't agree it's all about saving money. I think with the independent trust, although with the coming into council, my definite trustee will be an independent trust to protect, given that the local authorities and governments come and go. So this is my concern that's been set to protect particularly those 27 DRAs and forward through them. But given that also option 1 has been to the protection project, we think we must find the fight by option 1. So simply like a hard place from the investment.
Cool. For a while yet, Danny, so keep an eye on it. Thank you, Councillor John. All right, there we go. Philip, anything else? Karen, good to see you. The option B is certainly
resolution.
Yeah. So, did you move it, Councillor Taylor?
I'm happy to move it.
Yeah, good man.
Can't see it on. Oh, there we go.
Move it. Councillor Lachlan will shake it. Seconded, I mean. And I'm totally in support of your comments.
I'm happy to read what's written on the board. Yeah.
This was a pioneering project. Achieved our target. For us to carry on as the whole trustee in a certain way. Proud on behalf of people of Taupō, we care about it so much. Look after it. The ground and Waikato might have fallen away, but we never fall away from looking after our lakes. So thank you very much, guys, for bringing us here. So Been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carry. Thank you very much.
Recording is
Abstain. Thank you very much. Two abstentions. 5.3, final approval to make plan change 37 Lukaho operative. Hillary, good afternoon, Hillary.
Good
How are you?
Me, councillors and worship. So plan change 37, you're probably wondering what we've been doing. It came to you in 2022, February, to be approved, the decision, the recommendation from the panel to be approved. And from that point, it then was appealed. So we've been working away, it's been a little bit of a slow process to get that appeal resolved. So the appeal has now been approved through the Environment Court through a consent order. So that means we didn't need to go through a full hearing at the Environment Court, but they approved it on the papers basically. So that's the first part of this item. The second part is a couple of sort of discrepancies that we picked up in the decision as we worked through the mediation. During the hearing, there were some questions around the terminology of stormwater gullies, and some of the terminology was changed and some wasn't. And so what we've done is some clause 16.2 amendments, which are basically when you're making minor changes to a plan change, just to tidy those up so it's all consistent when people come in and put their consents in. There's a little bit of a slight risk here. The appellants have signalled some initial discomfort with the clause 16.2 amendments, just basically because of the implications on their property and the requirements that those amendments put on them. Basically, it's all around stormwater gullies and making sure that they're appropriately managed for stormwater. They're planted so that that prevents erosion, and there's recreational connections through those gullies. So I guess my signal to you is that there may be a little bit further process beyond this. We're not sure yet. We've been meeting with the appellants to try and talk through and make sure that they're as comfortable as they can be. It is a trust, so they are talking to their trustees at the moment about that and whether or not they take it any further.
Sorry,
Yes.
the current state is still under appeal?
Yeah, no, so we have to go through this final step to make it operative. Yeah.
Resolution.
Yeah, this is the final step, but they could oppose the clause 16.2 amendments, which are quite discreet. So the rest of the plan change would remain operative. It would just be a question around those clause 16.2 amendments and whether they were appropriate or not, which would be a question in an additional process.
Any questions of Hillary? Councillor Leonard.
So in light of that, Henry, should we be delaying this decision until that has been sorted out?
Yeah, and we went backwards and forwards on this a little bit. The issue is whether or not they oppose these clause 16.2 amendments. It doesn't matter whether we adopt it now or whether we adopt it in 2 months' time. They will make a decision whether they're going to challenge those or not. The other thing that we're trying to balance here is that we've got a lot of other landowners and submitters who were involved in this process. And we've been, it's been a long time since the decision was released on this plan change. And there's a lot of people that have been waiting on some certainty about what that means for their particular piece of land and how they can progress forward. So we're sort of balancing a few things here.
Cool. Councillor Westwood.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why we wouldn't delay for, have they got a certain amount of time to give us before they come back if they're going to appeal?
It was reliant on a trustee meeting, and so that where they'd be making a decision. So I guess my point is that if they're going to challenge them, they're going to challenge them, whether or not we adopt them now or in 2 months' time. They still need us to adopt them to then challenge them. Does that make sense?
So we still have to.
Yeah.
Okay, right, let's get this thing moving and hopefully the appealants will be able to come to some agreement. Okay, any other questions? 1, 2, and 3. Recommendation there, could I have a move, please? Thank you, Councillor Truman, seconded by Councillor Rankin. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. Thanks, Hilary.
Thank you.
Oh. Councillor Leonard, abstaining? You're against. Okay. Well, I better just clarify this. So those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against, please raise your hand. Recommendation is.
Sorry, you shouldn't be a pain. I'm just going to abstain. I'm not an owner in that block, but they're my neighbours. So just abstain.
Yeah.
Recommendation is.
I'll abstain as well.
Yeah, I'll abstain.
Hang on. Those for the recommendation. Sorry, Skip.
Can we be clear here? So I want Hilary to come back. So we're clear what we're doing. They can't oppose something that is not in effect. Is that correct? Do I hear that correctly? So we have to put the rule in effect for any opposition to be lodged. It's an academic question whether we do it now or in 2 months' time. Have I heard that correctly?
Yes, and we were just.
We're not achieving anything by delaying this by 2 months. We're not helping anybody. All we're doing is kicking the can down the road. Yeah. Because if there's an appeal, there'll be an appeal. They can't appeal something that isn't there. And until we put it there, they can't appeal.
Yeah.
So if we don't do it for 2 months, they'll appeal in 2 months. If we do it now, they'll do it now or not. So I get the abstentions and I get the voting against it. However, it's an academic exercise. Unless I've completely misinterpreted what you said.
That's correct. There may be some additional context that also might assist. And that clause 16.2 amendments can only be minor in their implication to the plan change. That's the only way you can make clause 16.2 amendments. They're basically tidying up errors. So these are essentially just making sure that the same terminology is used across all the gullies and stormwater systems within that plan change area. That was the consistent use of that terminology is all that the clause 16.2 amendments are addressing. So they're very minor in the effect, and they can only be minor in their effect to be a clause 16.2 amendment.
Councillor Lachlan.
To be clear, I'm not an owner in Rangatira 8A 17 blocks, but of course I'm blocks across the road. So I'm just abstaining. That's all my reasoning for abstaining.
Councillor Campbell.
Oh, just so is there a potential middle ground solution that could be reached, or was it yay or nay? I mean, that would be the advantage of delaying if there's a alternative solution possible. No?
There's the alternative is that you could not adopt the clause 16.2 amendments. However, that is going to lead to issues when there is a consent that comes in and the terminology is inconsistent and unclear for the consent planners to then try and process a consent. So you're basically delaying the awkwardness until later, or and causing issues for later because it won't be clear for the planners to interpret.
Councillor Fletcher.
Just a point of clarification around Māori engagement. It states that appropriate engagement was undertaken with Māori, but there were no further details as to what that engagement was and who it was with. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, sure. So this was a private plan change. So it was essentially like a large resource consent where applicants came together and they lodged a consent with council. So we were processing it like a resource consent essentially because it was a private plan change. And so in that circumstance, it's their responsibility to undertake the engagement with iwi, and they did so. As if going back a few years now, but they had a number of open days and meetings with iwi, off the top of my head, and that all went through the process with the commissioners, who have to make sure that that has been appropriately addressed through that process.
Let's be clear, this project was applied, the application was lodged, it then went with the plan change, which is quite a process. Then it got appealed. So all those issues.
Council approved it first, so you've already approved the recommendation, which came from. Yep, you've approved it, and then it allows for the appeal process, and then once the appeals are resolved, then you basically give it the final tick and say, right, let's make it operative.
Got it. Did get appeal after we approved it?
Yes, one appellant. Yeah.
All those problems were sorted out.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Here we are today. Yeah. Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you for that context. I think that was what was missing for me. And if I've understood correctly, we've got other landowners who are effectively in limbo. There's no certainty for them to move forward, correct? And it makes no difference whether we pass it now or later as to the appeal process and what the outcomes may or may not be for the other landowners. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
In that case, I'm happy to move.
Well, it was already agreed.
Oh, well,
I'm
now yes vote rather than
now,
abstaining.
okay. So technical query skills was moved originally by Councillor Carter. All right. Sorry.
So in the first part of the meeting, there was a mover and a seconder and a vote
Yeah.
that took place.
Who was the
And so I
mover?
was going to ask the same question about process.
Yeah.
I think there was not clarity when the motion was put. I think you should put it again and you will count that.
Okay.
But definitely you need to dispose of the motion.
Okay. Councillor Westerman.
Just so I can be clear, because it has been a long process and I know a number of people are involved in waiting for the outcome on both sides. And I suppose I just wanted it clear and finalised so the whole thing was wrapped up without any sort of objections. So that was what was in the back of my mind. If it would be nice and tidy and we waited another month to at the most for this to process through, but you can really just saying that that won't happen until the approvals and gives them the option to come back.
Yeah. So
it's not likely that they're going to just do it off their own back.
I mean, it's up to the trust now whether or when the clause 16.2 amendments go through, if they go through, then it's up to the trust whether they decide to take it any further or not. Or there's the potential that you could wait for them to come back to us and say whether or not they are going to or are not going to, and then adopt it. But whether or not they've still got a decision to make, whether they take them any further or not, regardless of the timing when we adopt them.
Okay, right. I think Councillor Shepherd. Move.
Just I'm happy to.
Yeah.
Sorry, we've still got the original motion, which is not clear.
Yeah, pop the original motion from
Councillor Taylor and seconded by Councillor Rankin. Sorry,
Rankin.
Councillor.
No, it was Councillor Rankin. So move to say.
So propose the original, remove that. So do we need to remove the previous motion in terms of process to move forward?
Well, after some clarification thought, is the original mover still happy to move?
Yeah, I thought so, but then I was like, oh, you've put someone else's name down.
Okay, so it's been moved by Councillor Truman, seconded by Councillor Rankin. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Motion is carried. Thank you. And abstentions and against votes. Abstention, Councillor Leonard, or against, and Councillor Lachlan, yours is an abstention. Very good. Right. Thank you. Sorry.
I was against too, sorry.
Oh, sorry, against, yes, yeah, cool, against. Councillor Fletcher against. Right, we will move on. We have something more exciting, gambling. Class 4 gambling policy review, 5.4. We have Mr. Andrew Wilson. Good afternoon, Andrew. How are you?
Afternoon, Mayor, and afternoon, councillors. I'm good, thank you. I'll take the item as read. However, just as a way of a quick recap, the Class 4 gambling policy is required to be reviewed every 3 years. And as part of that process, if there are any changes to be made, you're required to conduct a special consultative procedure. However, given that there has been no changes in the gambling space in terms of number of machines locally within the district, our proposal is that we make no changes and therefore roll over the existing policy until 2026. And this would not require a special consultative procedure. On top of that, the views and preferences of the community are also known, as consultation was previously conducted on this issue in 2020. So we are aware of what people think about gambling, and the lid has progressively been sunk without a formal sinking lid by successive councils. There's a graph in the report that illustrates that, and now we sit at 151 machines with a limit of 164. So any proposal to reduce that number further, the maximum you could possibly do would be to go to the existing 151 or slightly above. But looking at the previous resolution by council on this particular topic, it was decided to leave a small buffer in there for a variety of reasons.
Cool, thanks. Thanks, Andrew. Wasn't that long ago, was it? Right, any questions of Andrew? Councillor Greenslade.
Thank you, Worship. I read this quite carefully, Andrew. Gambling machines are an insidious form of gambling, and I make no secret of that. In fact, I think they're ghastly things. Have you got more information for us on the number of gambling machines we have in the Turangi district?
Turangi?
Yes.
On the top of my head, no, I don't have the number for Turangi. I can give that to you. I can take that from the DIA website and give it back.
Because you say a sinking lid, and my worry would be that they might be sinking overall, but they might be moving from one area to another area.
So there are provisions in the existing policy around transfers about how they can be transferred, and the process is in place to sort of make it difficult to just transfer willy-nilly. There is a process that they have to go through if they wish to transfer machines.
And the other question I wanted to ask you was, do we still have the situation where the proceeds from these machines do actually go back into the community? Is that
That's correct. It's required by law.
Is it a percentage or is it a total? Or?
My understanding is that it's all of the profit margin basically generated by the machines.
People from the community don't apply.
So they have, obviously, any operator has basic maintenance costs and things associated with those machines that they have to cover, but money does still go to the community, absolutely.
And does council monitor this, or who monitors this?
No, Department of Internal Affairs.
Thank you very much.
You have a question, Andrew. Councillor Freeman.
So I'm not for gambling machines either. I was just a bit concerned about the map for the Mangakino areas. So I know that's kind of like town centre, but it includes like residential sections now, and like what was our old pub is now kind of being turned into residential. And probably the only place that would really be appropriate would be our RSA, which is kind of like not coloured in, like, yeah. So that was my only thing, was if we've got the opportunity to change it, I think that especially some of them are like actual residences, it should not be in the blue. So is that something that we can do without going to?
No, we have to conduct a special consultative procedure for that, but that is something that you have the power obviously to do. But yes, it would require a special consultative procedure, and given the process in terms of knowing the views and preference of the community, if we were to delay that to the next period, we would be required to consult the community anyway next time, because our own policies on collecting those views and preferences make it so. So regardless of what you decide now, we will, if we don't consult now, we will have to consult anyway in 2026. Also,
apologies, Andrew, do you mind clarifying the purpose of those maps though, in terms of their actual effect
yes.
at the moment, given it's a sinking?
Yeah, so to clarify, the policy doesn't have a formal sinking lid embedded within the policy. It's just that successive councils have sought to reduce the harm caused by gambling by sort of reducing that lid, reducing that cap in line with the reduction in machines, and while providing a small buffer. Those maps are there to illustrate where gambling is appropriate and where it's not appropriate, where it's not allowed effectively. And so it sort of restricts that concern around what Councillor Greenslade raised around where people want to move machines around things they're confined to certain areas. But if those areas are inappropriate currently, then that would be something.
Can I note it, because they are totally inappropriate, and the only appropriate place isn't covered. Yeah, so if it's, I mean, we don't have any gambling machines in Mangakino at the moment, but yeah, so maybe, but if can it be flagged for next time?
Absolutely, yeah, and I can put that into the report, and you can flag it in the minutes of this meeting, and that will go in the file. So when the next review is conducted, whether it's by myself or somebody else, they will be aware of that issue.
Councillor Shepherd.
Your one's on, Danny. Thank you. So if we enter into consultation this round, will we still be obligated to do the same thing over again in 2026? Or will we preempt that by doing it now?
You could, yes, you could. So you could consult now.
And then not again in
not,
2026?
in theory, yes. Unless the legislation changed or our policies around consultation changed.
Okay.
Councillor Greenslade.
Yes, I just remember there was another thing too, and I looked at the map. So Turangi, you don't have the pub on there, which is where the gambling machines are, but you do have the church, and we don't have any in the church.
If the gambling machines are located outside of that area, then
yes,
that should not.
The only
That's a
place we've
compliance
ever
issue.
had them, correct me if I'm correct, Councillor, I'm sure the only place I've ever had them is in the pub.
Previously, the Charter Club.
In the Charter Club, which has long been closed. And the only place I'm aware of is in the pub, and it's not on here.
Yes,
yeah.
That must have been the previous one.
What's the story?
Good afternoon, councillors. Just to be really clear, the maps are valid in terms of the relocation clause which sits in the policy. So basically, if you've got an existing venue sitting out there in the suburbs, where you might have a bar and they've got some poking machines, they can keep on doing that. If they've got an RSA sitting out there and they've got some poking machines, they can keep on doing that. If a venue shuts down and they want to relocate those machines, that's when the maps become relevant. So they can only relocate into the areas identified on the maps. So the fact there might be some machines somewhere else is kind of irrelevant in terms of the policy in those maps. Does that help?
Yes. Thank you, Nick. And I would make the comment that the areas that you talked about relocating them are completely inappropriate. We're talking about the shops, we're talking about the library, the church, and a couple of restaurants, and the places we would actually most likely have would possibly be the RSA or the pub. And so the reality of is what you're saying is that once those places relinquish their gambling machines, they won't be able to go back there, but they'll be able to go over to these other areas in the town centre. So I'm suggesting here, is there any opportunity for us to actually say no, those areas are not appropriate? We don't agree with them being, I don't agree with them at all as being appropriate.
Absolutely. As Andrew outlined, we can go out and review the policy and make changes. The only consequence of that is that we have to do a social impact assessment. We have to undertake engagement with the community, particularly through the special consultative procedure, hold a hearing. We looked at the policy, and these maps haven't changed in years. So we looked at the policy, undertook a review, looked at the number of gambling machines, and in our view, there wasn't justification in terms of that expenditure of time and energy.
Yeah, last time you did that was 2020.
Correct.
So it's not that. But we're taking the point exactly that maps could be out of date. But we're out of that. Councillor Taylor?
But just to see where the conversation's heading, just a quick question, probably aimed at our chief executive. Given the pressure we have with LTP and other things going on in annual plan, what is the capacity to engage in all this work at this stage for the benefit that would accrue? And I'm thinking more of the pressure it's going to put on an already stretched resource within the policy team. Is it viable to do this now, or are we better off just to, as unpalatable as it might seem, just to put this on hold for a while?
Certainly the conversation we've had internally, which has led us to this recommendation. So the policy team, between the changes that are coming through from central government and doing submissions to those processes and running our corporate planning and policy processes, certainly my view was that to roll this over was the appropriate approach, recognising that you're managing quite a very small risk. If you think back to what's happened in the gambling industry, you're looking at the number of mergers and relocations and potentially this potential for new machines under our current policy. The risk is very small. That was exactly the recommendation that led to the paper.
Thank you, Julie. So, thank you. That was my concern around not minimising or diminishing the significance of this policy, but in terms of all the other things that are on the table at the moment. I just wonder whether we would be wiser to go with the recommendation in deference to pressure on the staff in the meantime.
Thank you very much. Councillor Greenside.
So thank you very much, Joy, for that. So basically what we're saying is it's what we're seeking to solve this problem. It doesn't exist anymore. And I'm comfortable with that, but just want everyone to know that it's not appropriate and I'm happy to go with it.
Cool.
For those reasons.
Councillor Fletcher. Thank you.
Again, an observation. Māori adults are 5 times more likely to become problem gamblers versus other New Zealanders. So, albeit this may not be recognised as an issue within the wider community for Māoridom specifically, this is a problem issue that requires a bit of action, I feel. Unfortunately, status quo hasn't serviced our people well. So it feels like we're going to go through a process, unfortunately, of status quo, which I probably don't agree with personally. But again, I'm here as a representation of my constituents and those people who I represent. And unfortunately, gambling is a massive issue amongst our people and something that potentially could require the intervention of local governments to assist in curbing those numbers. So I just wanted to make that mention, and also as a part of, again, the Māori engagement part of this. Again, what were some of their engagements done with Māori entities and organisations who are doing actually some really great work in this space, and how proactive are we in engaging them as a part of these decision-making processes. So I just wanted to express that.
So thank you very much. Councillor Westerman.
And I suppose taking on that on board, and I don't suppose we're expecting that work to be done tomorrow, but 2026 seems a long way out. Can we sort of indicate that we'd like to see it done by early next year?
You could bring in theory, you can bring the review period forward for that policy. So it could be rolled over in the interim as the review is due to be done. And then that work could be done at a later date, absolutely, if that's your wish. The question would be about capacity on staffing internally to conduct that review in terms of fitting it into the work program, but that's something the officers can clarify that. I'm not aware of all the ins and outs of the work program, so I'd leave that one to Julie.
If I may, just to clarify, the ability under the Gambling Act is we do not have any ability to remove machines, right? So we can set a policy that enables machines. We can set a policy to retain status quo. We can think a sinking lid policy, which over time, as machines are removed, not by us, but for commercial purposes, can bring that number down. So just, I think our ability to actually have an effect here or to change the effect through our policy is actually sometimes a little bit misunderstood from the community's perspective. So just reflecting back on Councillor Fletcher's comments, those absolutely are taken into account when you do the social impact assessment, which sets the policy. But our levers are very much around enabling more or that's the parameters you actually can set a policy that has quite a long-term impact.
Can't have an immediate change.
You can't have I guess it comes back to that conversation around the risk that you're trying to manage.
And sorry, again, just through your worship, that's the point. I think the point that I'm trying to make here is that, unfortunately, I just didn't want it to be an issue that, hey, oh, well, we're going to have to wait till another 3 years before we can, try and promote some actually quality change by engaging the right people and ensuring that we're doing all that we can as council to help curb that. That's all. And I like the idea of even if we start to move into it in the next year or so, but obviously not something to be swept under the carpet. Advice will be another 3 years' time. So,
Councillor Taylor. Thanks.
Can I suggest in that case that we go with the recommendation as it is, but in point 2, we place a bring up in 12 months' time, and then depending on capacity within the policy team, that we might go for it then or roll it over again rather than just leave it to 2026. So that's a halfway ground. We accept what it is, but I'm just conscious that we have this discussion around capital projects and we bow wave them. We just don't want to get into the same space with policy stuff. We go, yeah, we'll do that, we'll do this, and go, we don't have any capacity to do it, or we put undue pressure on the team, which is just not going to get stuff done anyway. So yes, we do that. Change it from the next review will be brought up for consideration in 2024, and then we have the same conversation and see where we go.
Very good. Okay, so yes, that's not what it's saying.
Except commentary, obviously, one good news obviously is reduced 2017, one better reducing numbers. Unfortunately, it's a hard conversation. It's always going to be divisive. For example, without going into too much detail, online gambling, things like that. So, very hard one to measure as well. Sure. But it's still, I accept it is an issue.
Councillor Shepherd.
I agree with Kevin's solution, because it would be a mistake for us to set ourselves up to fail on this policy. It's no good saying we want to do something and we don't have the capacity to do it. I like Councillor Taylor's suggestion.
I was going to second your worship in a BP.
Okay, so it's been moved by Councillor Taylor with the new number 2. Got the new number 2, Karen? Yep. Second by Councillor Park. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carry. Thank you. Motion. Thank you, gentlemen. Next item. Andrew.
Yeah, not getting rid of me so quickly, Your Worship.
Oh, just okay, bylaw review package, freedom camping, alcohol control and cemetery bylaws. Mr. Andrew Wilson. Good afternoon again.
Good afternoon again, Your Worship. As you may be aware, we brought to you probably about 6 months ago now. We had a workshop around these bylaws, and since then we received some direction to go and discuss what the impacts of these bylaws are with our community. So we've engaged in the process of pre-consultation with a variety of particularly interested parties around some changes and also what is working for them and what isn't working for them in regards to these 3 bylaws. Through that process, we heard from Taupō Police, around Taupō area police, around Kinloch ban area, Taupō ban area. And we also asked them, following up from questions that were raised by councillors around were there other issue areas, Paitiki and in Turangi, which police effectively told us there were not significant issues in those other areas, and that those communities were, for lack of a better terminology, people were being well behaved. They had trouble in New Year, in the New Year period at Kinloch, with a number of youth for the last two New Year periods turning up in excess of 200 individuals in the street, drinking, littering, and some violence, and prosecutions made against young people for their behaviour. As a result of that, we've looked to propose to the community an expansion of the Taupō ban area out to Te Papamārearea Street. That will capture a number of car parks as well as other areas where people have been coming into town, purchasing alcohol or having already purchased alcohol, and then hanging around in those car parks and preloading before they go into town. And then either getting in vehicles and driving home after the fact, or mulling around that area and then causing a range of different antisocial issues. And then we also took freedom camping out to a variety of our communities, and their feedback on freedom camping for the most part is again that freedom campers have been well behaved. They're not causing massive nuisance issues for communities. There was a number of our communities, particularly in Turangi, that sought some clarification about where people can and can't camp. And one of our actions through our bylaw review for the freedom camping bylaw was to direct anyone who's looking there that there are other areas that are prohibited for camping, but they're not prohibited under the Freedom Camping Act or under the bylaw. They're prohibited because of the Reserves Act. So that was more of an information thing to clarify things for people. We also looked at the Whakamaru Domain site, which has that mixed use space. It's currently partially used by the Mangakino Charitable Trust, or they hold the lease on that site, which they then sublease out as a way of earning income for the charitable trust to local farmer for grazing, as well as the motocross track is also there. So in our estimation, the purposes of that space are not really aligned with open freedom camping in the sense of non-self-contained vehicles or tents. There could be there's some health and safety concerns there with people being in tents around both animals as well as kids on motorbikes. As well as we have a plan around visitor experience. We have a destination management plan that says we want to make sure our visitors have a great experience. There's some obvious implications around being in a field with motorbikes and cattle for your visitor experience. And then we had the cemeteries bylaw, which was subject to quite a bit of discussion in our community, particularly with our Māori community. So we for example, on Sunday, we talked to Ngāti Turangi Tukua about the range of bylaws, and cemeteries was a hot topic. And we're proposing a change from the existing setup of having it in a bylaw to a handbook, and the handbook will provide one and more accessible framework for the community to get the information they need when burying a loved one, and also just makes it less less legalistic when you are trying to bury that loved one. There are a few changes proposed there around the burial depths, items outside of caskets being placed into grave sites for health and safety reasons, as well as some feedback that we received around individuals putting things on headstones potentially that are inappropriate. Aside from that, I understand there are a number of questions around the cemeteries handbook, and I'm happy to take any questions and also have a discussion around that.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew. Any questions, Andrew? Three things there, aren't there? Alcohol, cemeteries, music person.
And to be clear through the chair, this is a decision to go out for consultation on these proposals, not to actually adopt these as bylaws, operative bylaws. They are to consult the community if they also believe that this is the right direction. So it's talk with the community through pre-consultation. We've come up with some wording and some drafting around what we've heard from our internal staff teams around the challenges they're facing, challenges and issues from the community. We believe we've come up with some solutions to those problems. And we're basically seeking your approval to then consult the wider community on if we've got it right.
Very good. Councillor Park.
I think just through the chair, it's not a part of this, but along the same lines as the alcohol control. I originally spoke to Gareth, and apologies, Julie, I haven't talked to you about this yet, but vaping to me is a huge issue. And so I've been looking into different councils and what they do around smoke-free, vape-free environments, and what sort of controls we can have on, like we have a say on off licenses, so why can't we have a say on where vaping shops can go? It's a real concern, and it's just awful when school gets out and you see all these kids just walking down the street with smoke coming out of their mouths. Terrible.
Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for that rundown. I was the elected member that raised the Paitiki issue, and that's because the business owners want it, and that's because they're the ones dealing with the people coming out of the liquor store and drinking on site and causing issues. So all due respect to the police, they may not have the calls from people complaining, but that's largely because it's quite hard to get through and it's easier to deal with the situation then and there, which the business owners are doing. So I guess my question is, if we're going out for consultation, could I go back to these business owners and suggest they start collecting their own evidence of harm and then bring that into a submission process?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Just to be very clear, bylaws are a little bit tricky in that they're a bit like our local law. And when we put bylaws in place, we have to be really careful about making sure that we're following due process. If you think about something like an annual plan, you can go out and consult the community, and a new idea can pop up from the community, and you can consider that during deliberations. If a new idea pops up when we consult on a bylaw, we will probably need to go and reconsult on that bylaw. So there will become a second consultation process. And this is why we put a lot of emphasis on the early engagement before we go out with a formal process, so that we can flush out all of these ideas and consider them. So if it is something that you feel very strongly about as a council, then my advice would be to actually propose a restriction around Paitiki as part of the bylaw consultation. That would provide you the option to consider it during deliberations. And I guess the only thing we would push back on is to say that at the moment there's not a body of evidence to support that.
Yeah, to be super clear, the reason for that is that police don't have the evidence to support that. Whereas with Kinloch, for example, they have clear evidence, including a series of prosecutions related to that behaviour. So without that body of evidence and a clear and consistent level of nuisance, if you've got one or two people that are causing a problem every now and then, that's one thing. Whereas when it's a consistent pattern of behaviour, whether it's Kinloch at New Year, which is why it's only targeted around the New Year ban, not a full-time ban, or if it's this strip of the Taupō town where it has been consistent, then we can wholeheartedly and fully endorse, something like that.
I did actually go back to the business owners at Paitiki because they are quite passionate about this. There are issues, regardless of whether the police are aware of them or not. And I must say that, and I raised it earlier too as an issue for it to be considered, because these are members of the public who have raised it. They're there every day. So if anyone's got first-hand experience of what's going on down there, I would assume it was the business owners. And I would like to suggest that we maybe include that there for consultation, and in the meantime perhaps we can work on getting some evidence to the police. Is that an option? Just they are very passionate about it. We're actually talking about vigilante activity around that area if we don't do something about it.
Submission.
Yeah, they could make a submission, but in regards to evidence to police, the evidence doesn't need to go to police. It comes to us. Yeah.
Sorry, supplementary to that, when the police presence has been out there, they've asked about the liquor ban, and they were told this by the police that is a council consideration. So they are feeling like the police don't want to know and council don't want to know.
you wrote your point on, so it's obviously you're going out discussing with the community. Be careful not to be determining a position, you're going to consultate a process and giving opinions the way that's.
Councillor Campbell. Thanks, John.
Yeah, I'll just comment on that. Kinloch. Just my thoughts. I mean, it's nice in theory and probably perhaps does no harm to expand an area, but the issue clearly was numbers of police on the ground, and it always has been. I mean, it would be nice. Well, I would have thought almost essential to have police commitment, buy-in that they will actually do it, turn up in numbers. Sort of like doing widespread speed limit changes and the police not being on board to enforce. It's kind of toothless. That's my only comment on that. And on that note, are they a specific consulted party on the expansion of the Kinloch was the one I'm mainly thinking of.
In terms of the police being a specifically consulted.
Well, they're the ones who actually have to act on it.
Yes, absolutely. They're a specifically consulted party as they're the enforcement agency, and they often have the data. They have a specific tool around alcohol harm, which they use, which shows on a map area where that harm is happening, and they can pick specific areas that can show you the number of drink driving offences, for example. So then they know to put, that's how they then target specific areas for their booze buses and alcohol checkpoints. They use this tool regularly around in that space. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we've got to turn up.
Councillor Lachlan.
I was going to note that I live on the Open Street.
So you cannot carry a box home. Is that correct, Andrew? And he can't carry a box home, or is this?
He can carry a box home. He can't open the box and start consuming from the box.
Which quite often he does.
Oh.
No problem. Very good, Andrew. The cemetery book, that's all sorted today. So we're consulting on that as well. Yeah,
absolutely.
Freedom camping, yeah. Very good. Everyone happy?
Excuse me, Your Worship. In terms of the Paitiki area, does council wish to propose an area around Paitiki as well as part of consultation, preemptively, with or because we don't necessarily have
particular council there.
Well, yeah, we don't necessarily have the evidence to support that. To be clear, however, we may receive it through consultation. If we do not receive the evidence through consultation, then we would probably have to recommend it be removed. I just want to make sure we're clear on that one.
Yeah, I don't have a problem putting that in. Councillor Taylor.
Oh, with double numbers of councillors advocating for that then. That seems to me to be a sensible way forward. Otherwise, it's a double bank process. Get the evidence through consultation, you have to go back and do it again, which seems a waste of time if we're doing it first time. So I would suggest we do that. And everything else what Andrew said.
Very good. Okay. Thank you very much. Can I have a move a report being accepted, please? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'm looking for members for the hearings committee.
So, Rich, the same.
Yeah.
I'm happy to nominate Councillor Park, Councillor Rankin, and Councillor Greenslade. Before I get nominated.
Councillor.
Yep.
Just thinking about Rachel here.
Oh, Rachel.
Personal interest.
Pretty committed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was this SNP Deputy Mayor? 33. Okay. Happy with that, Sandra? Christine? Anna?
So that gives us a Turangi lens as well.
Very good. So 1, 2, and 3, you've got the names. Yep. Cool. Been moved by Councillor Taylor. Did I have a seconder, please? Seeing that, Councillor Fletcher, thank you very much. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carry. 5.6, the Arara River Iwi Trust Terrace, Taupō District Council Joint Management Agreement Review. Cornelia and Hunch, good afternoon. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Your Worship, Councillors. Just by way of a quick summary, this item which I take as read seeks your approval of the joint recommendations put forward by the Co-Governance Committee regarding the joint management agreement we have with Te Arara River Iwi Trust as an outcome of the Waikato River Act. The recommendations is outlined on page 28. I think it is in your agenda, are an outcome of the efforts of our committee and joint working party. So if I could just quickly acknowledge and mihi to our existing members on that committee, which are Councillor Williamson, who is our current chair on that co-governance committee, Councillor Leonard, Councillor Truman and Councillor Fletcher, but also our Chief Executive, Julie, and our policy, resource consents here, Three Waters and iwi Partnerships team for their efforts at operational level on the joint working party. As you would have read in the report, there's a section within the JMA that requires periodic reviews of the JMA, and that the co-governance committee is seeking to postpone the comprehensive review until after the general elections in response to the uncertainty surrounding the reforms. Excuse my voice. And I just want to reiterate that postponing the review until after the direction of those related legislation is known does so enable us to continue to give effect to our existing arrangements under the JMA, but also continue discussions around some other joint opportunities that are equal importance to us, such as housing in the meantime. Obviously, endorsing the recommendations will support the direction and leadership of the Co-Governance Committee and further strengthen our relationship with Te and Ngāti Tahu and Ngāti Whao moving forward. So that said, Mayor David, unless David Hunch has anything further to add, short and sweet, and unless there are any other questions from the councillors, I'm happy to hand it back to you.
Cool, thank you so much. Nothing?
No, nothing there from the
Excellent. Any questions or queries? Councillor Williamson.
No, thanks. No support for his commentary, and David, as the co-chair, we've had, I think there's two discussions at the co-governance meetings. Seem to watch all over going forward. Like to move the recommendation.
Cool, thank you, John.
Just
Councillor Shepherd.
it all makes sense to me as well. We're not in any danger of being outside of any legislation by putting it off, are we?
No, it's all compliant with the existing legislation.
Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Williamson. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Leonard, thank you very much. All those in favour, the 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 there, correct? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carry.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thank
Dawn. Thanks, David. 5.7, Health, Safety and Wellbeing Report. Nigel, you're there.
Michelle's on leave today, so you've got me instead. Hopefully I can answer your questions. Thank you, Worship. So health and safety, as usual, the report's split into three parts. So safe systems, safe workplace and safe people. So under safe systems, I guess the thing I'd like to point out is there were no medical treatment injuries for this report in quarter, which is really good news. The usual slips and trips and small first aid matters, which are the usual. I guess the pleasing thing to see is that the aggressive behaviour towards our council staff trended down this quarter. But we are conscious, of course, with dog registration and rates that there may be some tensions out in the community, which may see itself reflected in behaviours towards our staff. I'm aware that we are providing some de-escalation training to our front of line staff. That's been carried out internally by Ross McDonald. So really useful to use people and staff who've got those suitable skills to help out the rest of our staff deal with those situations. Of course, those aren't isolated to the Taupō district. I think we're seeing, as you've heard before, an uptick in those aggressive behaviours towards public sector staff. So it's just something we need to continually keep on top of and manage. You'll see there are a couple of contractor incidents for this quarter. Both of those are under investigation. We're taking a bit of a deep dive into the low voltage electric shock to the contractor matter. just to make sure that there aren't any issues of electrical non-compliance as we saw with the River Road water treatment plant. Just want to make sure that everything's, that standards are being kept up by our contractors. So we're doing a bit of a deeper dive into that one. And the emergency preparedness, obviously a focus on fire safety in buildings. So we've made sure we're over the top of our evacuation drills across all our venues and our office environments. So it's good to see those all completed. In relation to safe workplace, some good improvements going on here. We've rolled out an audit tool through the use of an app for our contract managers. So we can get out there and actually do on-the-spot auditing of our contractors to make sure they're following the required safety performance standards. We're doing some traffic management audits, and we are engaging some specialised people to look over those particularly complex jobs with high risk profiles, making sure we've got good oversights of those sorts of projects. Our health and safety committees are operating well, and you'll see the focus recently on some of those has been closing out our incidents in our health and safety software, our Damstra system. And the importance thing of that is so that we can communicate the lessons learned through the closing out of those incidents. In relation to our safe people, again, mental well-being is a key focus. You would have heard a lot about that across many organisations, and this council is no different. We've got coming up in July and August some training courses about mental health first aid. I think there's gone out to pretty wide uptake across all council managers and supervisors, so that's going to be useful. Uptake in COVID-19 cases, as we've seen in the community, and we're still offering the COVID-19 vaccinations and flu vaccinations to our staff. So again, all that stuff focused on our having safe people. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Nigel. Any questions? Nigel, Councillor Greenslade.
Thank you very much, Nigel. There were two questions I wanted to ask you. Specifically relating to the incident that happened in it wasn't an incident, catastrophe in Wellington with the Loafers Lodge. We've got IPPs here. It says they're responsible for council-owned buildings. Do we have other people responsible for buildings such as that one in Wellington?
Yeah, so it's
this report is about the wellbeing and safety of our staff. And
Yeah.
so I guess that comment we expect to come up with our risk and assurance committee. And so yes, we do have building obligations around building. Since we're up to date with those, but that will be a topic of conversation, I imagine, at risk and assurance.
Thank you very much. And the second question was about the internal traffic management. What does that mean?
Oh, just doing our traffic management around the work that the council and the contractors are doing, just making sure we get an overview to make sure all the cones are out and all of that.
The cones are out.
That's great.
Okay, thank you very much. That was just two simple things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions of Nigel? No, good as well. Thanks, Nigel. All right, recommendation, we received the health, safety and wellbeing report for period May 2023. Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Seconded by Councillor Park. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. It's carried. 5.8, Taupō District Council Performance Report. Julie, good afternoon.
Councillors. Firstly, as always, this is a team effort, so we'll take the report in several parts. Just to start with, though, really the intro actually acknowledges achievements for our staff, particularly for the District Operators Group Awards, which the council was keen to recognise that those particular staff that were successful in achieving those awards. One thing I was going to add really was just to acknowledge that council is going through its process of looking at its vision and strategic priorities as part of the LTP development process, and once that's finished, the strategic priorities that are outlined in this report will be updated. So, so these are our current ones, but they will be changed as soon as they That is me, unless there's questions on the first part. And then we're over to Jeanette in terms of finance.
Thanks, Julie. Any questions for Julie? Councillor Greenslade.
It was sort of just a comment really, but executive team currently finalising key decisions around the way we will work in the new building. Once that is finalised, the project team will be able to initiate a plan around this. I'm sort of conscious of the fact that when the building was planned, it was COVID, and that the workplace and the way people work has changed. And so this is what we're talking about when we're talking about how people are going to be working in this building. This is something that's presumably going on at present.
Correct, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what that means.
That's exactly what it means. Thank you.
Cool. Afternoon, Jeanette.
Afternoon, Your Worship, councillors. I'm just here to talk about the financial summary. Really, not a lot has changed. We're tracking on the same trajectory as we have all year. Our costs are coming in close to budget or over budget. Our revenue, our operating revenue is also coming in close or over budget, and they tend to offset. It shows a large surplus because we've got capital grants and development contributions, which relate to non-operating activities. So it's for financing assets, etc. So that is why it's sitting at 18 million. So I'll take the report as read, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Julie. Any questions on the financials? That's good. Count on down there. That's good. Thanks, Jeanette. Next up,
So next part is the project management aspect.
project management. Now and Pete.
Tēnā koutou, Your Worship, the councillors. How are you? It's good to be here again. Thank you. Talking about significant projects. You'll note this month we have a new look report. Yes, actually, amber's turned into yellow. I do agree. Okay, so key changes. We've included scope because this is quite an important project management performance measure. That's because scope prevents projects, especially the complex ones, from expanding beyond their original established vision. When a scope RAG status is red, it's likely that the project benefits will not be met. As you can see, 77% of our projects are green for scope, and those ones that are amber have pretty clear descriptions as to extenuation reasons which cause the scope to go slightly beyond the original documented balance. We've also added a comment section, which is column 5, to explain any notes to the RAG status so that month on month you can see what the differences are. Because if you're anything like me, I like to compare back to what happened last month and see the key changes. Obviously, we're targeting more of an exception-based report in this, and we're going to continuously improve the significant projects report as we head into the annual plan. And I'd like to also mention my teammate Elijah and other members of the PMO team for assisting with the redevelopment. The comment section still continues to provide milestones update and the consent complete. So in summary, delivery across the 17 projects is up from 35% to 37% over April, May. And there will be one more report for this financial year before we move into a new set of annual plan projects. Obviously, a number of these projects are continuing, so you'll continue to see that same information as we deliver those. There's no major changes to status across the current portfolio, and I'd just like to give a big shout out to the TTCT project team, members of whom attended the Taituara Awards in Wellington a few weeks ago. And whilst we did not win our placemaking entry for the Local Government New Zealand Awards, We had a great time trying to win, and it was really great to see some of the other amazing projects. I think we all agreed the winning, and in our section, the Hastings Municipal Centre was pretty amazing. 8 years, 40 million, hard to compete with that. Also, for those of you who don't know, it was great news for the TAA, the Airport Authority, TDC, and our partners, Shelter Architects and Watts Construction, to win the Commercial Architecture Award at the Waikato Bay of Plenty Architecture Awards recently.
What happens with that now? Does that go through to the final? National final? It does?
Yeah. Cool. And just your worship, through the chair, we're also putting in an application for the airport awards. In keeping with tradition, I would like to hand over to Pete Bradshaw, a senior project manager in our PMO, who's going to spend a couple of minutes just stepping us through his larger significant projects that he's working on. Many of you will be familiar with Pete. And I'd just like to take a few moments for those of you who aren't involved in any of the steering groups on his projects to hear straight from grassroots. Thank you.
Well done, Peter.
Thank you for that.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, been quite an exciting time of late, both in Turangi, and Councillor Greenslade was kind of brief summary there, but also more locally here in Taupō with Waira House. So, given it's a good news story, we'll share that. We'll share that with you. In terms of Turangi, we opened Te Mātāpuna, which is the sport facility down there, beginning of May. We've had some excellent feedback from the park users over the last 4 to 6 weeks. Just putting some finishing touches there, some last of the remaining defects that we had at opening, but that's just about to close down. So real great success story there so far. Hot on the heels of that, we have the playground at Te Kapua Park. As Sandra said, we have had some luck with the weather, although you might not think it. We've been allowed us to pour concrete and do those weather-dependent tasks in a timely manner. So we're on track to complete the playground towards the middle of August. Looking to open that on the 31st of August, so that date to be confirmed with Turangi-Tukua, but looking to do that. So certainly on track for that. So that's exciting news. And on that one, looking to involve the local school kids who have been quite involved throughout the design process. And when the carousel was winched into place the other day, there was a crowd of them at the fence line looking in at the new play equipment that was going in there. Looking to bring them back in for a planting day around the middle of August. Yeah, just to get that community engagement and involvement and that sense of ownership in the playground. But from what I can see, lots of excited faces, and I think people await the opening with great anticipation down there. So nice to see those two sort of flagship projects going live or thereabouts down in Turangi. Waira House 2, getting into the final stages of that. We'll be looking to get code of compliance for that building at the end of this week. I think Friday the inspection is planned. Working with the Waira Community Trust on the fit out of the building. So you may have seen through the windows, furniture going in there now, technical fit out, also installation of some of the cultural elements that we've been working with Delaney Brown on. Those sorts of things will be happening over the next 6 weeks or so. Again, looking for an opening around the end of August. So date to be confirmed on that one. But again, a big piece of work and highly visible piece of work, and yeah, it's all coming together quite nicely.
As well.
Yes, well, we have a proven template for the application for those awards. So I think certainly Paul from Shelter Architects is very keen to be putting that forward next year.
When do you think the fence will come down, Pete?
Looking at keeping the fence in place till close to opening. We reluctant to move that, I guess, for two reasons. As soon as we remove that, we lose a bit of control over how people interact with the site. So whilst we're still trying to grow grass and do some of the landscaping, whilst the trust is still putting some final touches on their sort of operating model and working out how to manage the car park and different things like that, we think it prudent to keep that in place. The building is fully alarmed now, however, so security risk to the building, we're quite covered, but it's more just protecting the grounds and the operation.
Very good. Any questions on Wild House? Councillor Lachlan.
I have one to Wild House, just on the playground in Turangi. We had an earlier discussion around children with disabilities, and also we had that I was watching on television with Fair Go. So what we have got things in place in terms of wheelchair access and that sort of type thing in terms of those.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of accessibility, obviously not just wheelchairs, but pushchairs and all sorts of things. Also, disabilities need not necessarily just be physical. We've sort of thought about, I think down in Turangi, there was some community feedback around children with autism, for example. How do they interact with that? So factored in those sorts of things. I think Councillor led at a previous meeting some time ago talked about opportunities for children to build core body strength by the use of play equipment. So we tried to factor in all of those considerations into the design. So for a mix of the equipment, through the surfacing that we're using, and yeah, looking outside the box, we've got a bit of a sensory play area. So with things that children who might not like the hustle and bustle of the main playground and want a bit of space, they can go to that and experience fun in a slightly different way. So obviously not every bit of play equipment will be accessible to everybody, but what we're trying to do is make it inclusive so that even if you can't use every specific bit of equipment, you can be in and around the fun as well as taking part on specific items. So yeah.
Very good. Thanks, Pete. Great teamwork, you guys. Products you're producing that are really going to be proud of in years to come as well. So, all right.
Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Taylor.
More a comment. It's been a pleasure working with the team on a number of steering groups, and thank you for the work that you're doing, and also the report. That is really good. So whoever helped design, was it Elijah? Or tell him thanks. Reading through that actually deals with a whole lot of questions just straight off just by reading it. So thanks very much. Appreciate the extra information.
Actually, I was about to say that one of the things that was so noticeable, and even though I came late to the party, was your openness to take on board suggestions from other people and listen to, what everybody had to say. That was very noticeable. Just one point, with the revitalisation project, 2 questions. Any feedback really on whether MB are going to come to the aid of the party with the funding? It's a very delicate time, and I'm well aware that MB have got heaps of other strains on their purse.
Thank you for your question. It's very timely. I was quite concerned that our minister might get caught holding some Walking Dead shares, perhaps. So I was quite keen to identify and move forward. No word as yet. The signatory for that is Grant Robertson. It's Grant Robertson. We have Plan B, which you'll see there's an amber scope because we keep identifying additional infrastructure issues down there, which is a good thing because at least you know what you know. I guess the Plan B means that we continue with the project with less scope, but yes, absolutely, still pressing on. And in fact, we did get feedback from MB directly that because our Turangi Street revitalisation was part of a number of projects that went up to Minister Robertson at once in regards to slightly more request for funding, he was given a list of those projects that were holding up the works, and ours was not on that list. So he felt that that was a very positive sign, but obviously it's too soon to get full feedback.
Thank you for that, Peniel. And the other thing was the replanting, negative feedback from the residents. So that was a fairly lively Facebook discussion, which I did follow. And I sort of felt a bit sad about it actually, because I know that even though the trees that weren't exactly the ones that were put on the original list, they were ACEs, and it was sort of recognised that the colour Turangi and the fact that a deciduous tree is good in an environment where it's very cold, so you get lovely summer sun in the winter and youth sheltered in the summer. I was a bit sad about that. So I'm sort of hopeful that that's maybe, you know, why is it on hold? I suppose the question.
Oh, so, and I'm paraphrasing now my feedback from Peter van Niekerk, who's obviously the project manager on the ground, and Marama, who does a lot of work down there. She's wonderful. Also Andy on our comms team. I guess it's partly a symptom of the longevity of this project. The people who were possibly communicated with directly at the very beginning of the project as part of the original scope of works have possibly changed houses, or the person that was there and got that notification and might have looked through the list of trees and provided feedback have moved to another site or changed location. So there is a process underway, which is a replica of what happened previously, including some updates to the possible trees that are being surveyed. And I think the feedback's been really strong. So I guess it's just a case of realising that stakeholders will always remember who you are, but you might forget who they are. And so we just need to keep reiterating the same types of please feel included to provide your feedback.
Thanks. Thank you.
Cool. Very good. It's great.
Thank you. There's one more thing, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Richard. One more thing, clearly on the recreation activity centre, the hapu took place, the meeting with the hapu took place in June, the hui? That did take place, didn't it?
Andrew's up. He's up.
Sorry, through the chair. So this was something I intended to update you on this morning at our catch up. Unfortunately, you had some rather pressing matters to deal with, so we didn't quite get to it. We haven't had a hapu discussion yet. We've had a meeting with landowners in order to facilitate a discussion with hapu, which will come in the next month or so.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew. Right. Very good. Excellent team. Thank you. Good to see you. Nothing else, really? Councillor Locke? Yes, I was just going to ask the CEO, Quantum, marvelous computer system. Will we get an update at some stage as to how's that progressing? Is that, sorry, just I was just thinking away in the financial report now. I wonder how Quantum's going.
Good, Chair. I wonder if it's something that we add into the project report going forward. We've made a few changes that Andrew has alluded to there, so we add that in. Yep. At the moment, just really high level update for you. It is we have done a bit of a stop and review. So we've gone to the organisation, we've done some engagement work to see how it's going. We'll provide you that information how it is. We've learned a lot from that process. We've learned some really probably simple things that we could have done differently that's going to help us move forward and potentially relook at what that delivery looks like going forward. So if you wish it, we can add that to the performance report going forward and update you separately.
Thank you very much. Right, any other questions of Julie? No problem. Thank you very much. Seconded by Councillor Fletcher. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Right, moving on. 5.9, appointment of Chief Executive Officer, Director of Boplas.
Kia ora anō. Kia ora koutou. It's me again with probably the world's shortest paper. So the purpose of this one is to formally appoint our Chief Executive Officer as Taupō District Council's Director on the Board of Boplas. So Boplas, our shared services across 9 councils. It's really simple. The CEs are the 9 directors. As much as Mrs. Gardine is our Chief Executive, we need to formally appoint her as our Director to Boplas. So it's really just to move that very simple paper for you.
Moved by Councillor Laughlin, seconded by Councillor Park. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye.
Maki nui.
I just have a question. Are there other appointments that we need to make in light of our CE?
So a number of those have been worked through.
They're not ready to go yet.
Probably not many of them require actual council resolution. This is a company, but the rest of them are pretty much working.
Through the chair, if we do need to do any, we can do that as a block.
With the option we're given to us with Waikato WS last term, I'm assuming the advice we're given, nothing's changed for the communication with Waikato.
So Waikato Left still keeps us informed of the projects and the work that we're doing. We can opt in on a per project basis. So I've still looked into that piece of work and of course into what this is.
Right, sorry. We carry on. 5.10, council engagements, appointments and training and conference opportunities, July. Karen or Shane? Good afternoon, ladies.
Kia ora. So there's just one addition to the engagements that are listed, and that's just on Tuesday, the 11th of July, your third session for developing the vision and strategic vision of the district. So it's 11:30 to
What date is it?
Tuesday, the 11th. Otherwise, everything else is there.
Councillor Taylor will be over there. Sorry, Councillor Westerman.
Just a query on the meeting. It's 2 hours long on the 18th of July. A workshop, parking for politicians.
Yeah.
What are we going to talk about for 2 hours?
Sure. So that's,
Airport.
no, it's been put through by the transport team, and they have a couple of facilitators, external facilitators. So if you open the attachments, there's a flyer about what it is. That's what they call it. So that's what I called it, but I put it in your calendar.
It's not about airport parking.
Well, it's going to be
It is, but you got free park, or you get free park anyway. Sorry, Andrew's
Through
excited.
the chair, I'm willing to
It's
provide.
your idea.
So it's not my idea, Your Worship, but I am available to provide more context if required. It's not a training exercise in how to park your vehicle. It's more around understanding the different features of parking and aspects of parking to be considered. And it's relevant because we're going to come to you shortly after this workshop with a refresh of our parking strategy following the town centre transformation. So it's timely to understand a bit more of what else is going on in the industry. And this very reputable provider who's providing these workshops around the country. So it's well worth your time in terms of understanding.
What's the cost of the workshop?
You're going to start charging, aren't you? I can see.
All will be reviewed.
Can I ask who the provider is?
I don't have the details, but they're in the information pack that's provided to you as part of the invite.
Stephen Burgess and Scott Hewitt.
Can't wait. All right. Any other questions or queries on engagements? Councillor Greenslade.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to remind the community that this month the Tonga representative group meeting will be held in the Onori Kurutau Hall, and we rotate around the 3 districts. So this might be a nice idea just to get a message out to that community that will be out there.
What date is that?
It's on, she said, I just looked at it, Wednesday the 19th.
Most famous scones will be provided.
I don't know anybody who likes corn. Not me.
I do have there. Last time was the Memorial. Councillor Lachlan, thank you very much, Councillor Lachlan. And second, Councillor Taylor. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. All right, that's the public part of the meeting. Now we will move into conference.